Welcome, John Abendroth here, a former PGA Tour player, and my latest Zoomcast, sponsored by Original Joe's of Westlake, and my guest today, Bryan Beasley. Bryan, you've eaten at Original Joe's, have you not?
Oh, of course. I love go to see the Dugans.
That's great. So, I've really prided myself on having a variety of different types of people and walks of life. And Bryan and I are friends. We've talked about doing this for a long time, but wow, you have a win on the tour last week on the Corn Ferry Tour, caddying for Scott Kajeski, and I love little ironies of life. In that my Zoom last week was with Spencer Levin, who won after 350 championships that he's played in. Congratulations! What an exciting week for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great week, and I think it had been 15 years since Scott won in 2008. Maybe that was his second win back on the Corn Ferry Tour, which I think was maybe called the Nationwide back then. Um, and so it was great to get him a victory and to be along for the ride.
So he outlived a couple of sponsors to bring it to the Corn Ferry. And I was watching it. They don't have much of a play-by-play, if anything. And he was a shot behind, and then he was tied. And then at one point online, they flashed that he had gotten to 22 under, and then they retraced that. And then all of a sudden, he's in a playoff, caught the 40-footer he made on the first playoff hole to win it. Wow, what a deal.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He made a long save on 16 for par, and I think our walking score got excited and put it down as a birdie because it was about a 25-footer, and they didn't realize that we had chipped it to there, and so that really kind of got us going. And he had a real good look on 17 that just hung on the lip, and we just got through 18 and got to the playoff. And luckily, the putt we had in the playoff was almost the same line we had in the 18th hole. And so there wasn't a lot of reading. We had picked a spot the first time, and he kind of said, "I'm looking at the same spot." And I said, "Great." And he just poured it in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I've said this for a long time that I think that the players play harder and more aggressive on the Corn Ferry because the top 10 is where they absolutely need to be. But on the regular PGA Tour, a guy makes the putt, makes the cut, and he can kind of cruise in to finish in 40th and make a lot of money. But to really make it happen on the Corn Ferry, these guys more so have the pedal to the metal every week.
Yeah, the last few weeks there's been an awful lot of birdies, and we teed off at the beginning of the week. You don't talk about numbers, but we knew it was going to be something over 20 under par. And it took us a little while to get going. Saturday he had a fantastic 9 under par, which it could have easily been another 59. I think somebody else shot 59 on Friday.
That's right.
So these guys were shooting some low scores. And Sunday was
for first. So
yeah, that's a pretty good week for most. It's not a PGA check, but it's a pretty good week.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's got a couple little bonuses from sponsors and different things like that. But let's go back a little ways. You've had a number of players that you've worked with who've gone on to the PGA Tour, and you've had some what I'd call bad luck with some of these guys. I remember, I want to say it was not Pebble Beach, but the Torrey Pines U.S. Open. Your guy finished like 45th or so, and you'd played about 3 weeks in a row, and you took a week off, and then next thing you know, his brother's on the bag.
Yeah, Dylan was playing great. We had talked about it a little bit that he was looking for something, but I said, well, let's see if we can qualify in the Open. And we finished, I think we might have finished 30th or 31st in the Open, which was pretty good. And I had a planned week off, and I thought kind of I was safe, but he had a little dream in his mind that he and his brother were going to go to the PGA Tour together. So sometimes when you lose a job to family, that's not really losing a job. And he actually sent me a congratulations both Saturday and Sunday night. So we stay in touch. And in this business, like any other business, it's good to just you stay in touch with everybody. And so he got me a lot of exposure. So I was proud to have that. But yeah, I would have loved to spend more time on the PGA Tour with him.
So you've been amazingly patient to kind of stick it out and go week to week, and now you've got players calling you, which is obviously great. And then being a Bay Area native, you've actually moved to the East Coast, and you have a nice club where you caddy there and your weeks off. So, and I think you said before we hit the record button that you were packing for a couple of guys who were hitting it left and right and everywhere else, and you said, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, it's a great place to be, but it's a different experience of, getting in the competition and caddying in a professional golf tournament. And I really like caddying at the club, and I can help guys get better. But it's a different experience, and they're both kind of part of making this job work. But it's been great. There's just been a ton of players and a ton of experiences. I was looking at the field last week, and I think there was 16 guys in the field that I'd caddied for before.
Wow.
And there was probably another 3 or 4 playing on the PGA that I'd worked for. So I didn't know I was going to have 18 or 20 players, but it kind of happens that way sometimes, and it forces you to get better at your job.
It's kind of fun having played myself and watching the tours. It's kind of fun to see stories like this pop up, like Scott and Spencer Levin. That you see a guy that wins his third tournament, and on the regular PGA Tour, that's all fine and good, but these guys that get through the Korn Ferry and onto the PGA Tour, it's such a huge life-changing thing for them that they've worked so hard at it. You look at a guy like Sam Saunders, who is from the royalty of the Palmer family, but he keeps chugging away and plugging away at it. I think the stories are just fantastic.
Yeah, it's the characters from the players to the caddies on the Korn Ferry Tour. It's the easy book to write, because writing a book or telling a story, it's all about the characters, and there's quite a few of them out there. I actually was paired with Sam for 2 days in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and he's the greatest guy. He does come from royalty, but he's salt of the earth and always great with everybody. I remember seeing him one year in the Bahamas. He had a local caddy who didn't know anything about golf, and he could have just told him carry the bag and stay out of the way, but he taught him about the game, and he showed him how to do things. And he was doing all his golf, but also caring about this guy who was local, who was, spending some time with us on the tour. So there's been some great stories for sure. And they're not always happy ones. Sometimes they're tough.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, we mentioned before we went on the air here, Tommy Gainey, who, you've gotten to know, and he's asked you to work with him. And, I got to know him a little bit. We had him on the radio show at one time, and, what a story he is. He worked at the factory, and, he was out, I guess, kind of as a hustler and playing mini tours. And now, he's been on the tour. I think he's first alternate this week to play in Mexico. What a story he is. Two gloves, Tommy Gainey.
Yeah, he's a character, and he has a pretty homemade swing, but when he gets it going, which he did this last week, he can really still play. And I had the good fortune last year working 3 weeks with Boo Weekly, who's another great character, and he's going to be 50 in July. So he's getting his game back, and he's had some shoulder surgeries and a couple different things, and he'll be a big draw on the Champions Tour, in the next 5 or 6 months when he starts getting some sponsors invites up there as soon as he turns 50. And his stories are great too.
A couple of Ryder Cups, right?
A couple of Ryder Cups, the famous, riding the horse like he was Happy Gilmore. And he hits it so well. We were at the first tournament, or maybe the second tournament together, and he was on the range just hitting 8 irons, and all the young players and the volunteers were standing around watching him, and everybody else has a TrackMan, and they're aiming at something, and he picked a tree out in the distance, and there was a shadow next to the tree that had to be 8 feet by 15 feet, and he hit half a dozen balls, maybe more, right into that little shadow. And then he missed one by about 2 yards, and he said, "Oh, I'm done. I don't like missing it." And he hits it pretty good on a string.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what's Scott's plan? Let's go back to Scott here. What's he play 3-4 weeks and take a week off kind of a guy?
Yeah, I think so. And they've done a better job with our Corn Ferry schedule. We're going to play this week, which will be our third week in a row. And then there's a built-in 2-week break. And then I think we'll play 3 weeks in a row again. And then we'll go from there. I know he's going to go watch. Both of his sons are very good players. One of them's playing at Iowa State. And his name's Luke. And Luke actually was the medalist in the U.S. Amateur last year. In the medal play portion. I think he might have lost in the first or second round, but a very good player. So he takes some time to go watch his boys play and support them. And I'll spend some of that time going home to watch my kids as well and recharge my batteries. And hopefully after this win, it'll help us set us more secure because he now knows that he just needs a couple more good finishes to get back.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned when we were setting this up today that you had to get back to the Airbnb before the other caddies got there. Boy, that's a new way of doing it. I know when I used to play, there'd be Motel 6 would be 2-3 guys share a room or just find a place to stay. So it's a little more organized. Are you one of the organizers of that?
I generally am. This one I kind of lucked into. These guys got a 5-bedroom house and there was, maybe an extra space for me. And so we'll see how this goes. And if we'll get organized. It's a good time to get some camaraderie and, we'll all do our research and sometimes talk about it over dinner. So if we found something on the golf course that was something we were going to focus on, everybody, at least on this tour, works together a little bit more and it's more of a family. And I think in order to make ends meet, it's kind of a necessary part of the job. And that, again, that's where you go to the stories and you meet guys from different walks of life that maybe were ex-players or maybe we're coaches or teachers, or maybe they just love the game and they like being out here, which I think there's not too many guys that are out here just because it's a job. It's more of a dream and you got a lot of passionate people.
Yeah. And I guess they want to get the good player that goes on to the PGA Tour. And now, especially with these designated events, the whole atmosphere is going to change now. I mean, when the LIV started, we didn't anticipate that all this other commotion would happen with the new designated events and, $3.8 million for first place and, 50 grand for last place every week. And then only 70 players to get through into the full exempt status, I guess it is for next year. So, man, it's a whole different world right now.
Yeah, there's been all the press about the live, but the net for everybody in the golf business is that there's more exposure and more money. So I think it'll probably be a good thing. So everybody's obviously trying to do that, but really I think guys, they just like the competition. It's, the once or twice a year when guys get to play in their club championship or in their member guest and they get to feel the juices, we're trying to feel the juice every week.
Yeah, that's great. Bryan, it's great to stay in touch with you and really congratulations on the West Week. And it's just kind of funny that, we've talked about doing this for, I don't know, months, I guess, and sharing some stories. And then all of a sudden, you get back on Scott's bag and you win. And I'm glad that we connected on this and, just really, really, really great. So we'll be watching this week and hopefully, maybe see you at the AT&T and at Silverado again, and some of those things. So best of luck the rest of the year.
Thank you, John. It's great to stay in touch with you. I saw you play a lot of golf around the Olympic Club, and shared a drink or two. And it's great to have your support and to always kind of stay in touch. And to see you sharing it with my buddies. I got a bunch of messages from those guys at Olympic Club today, so it's good to hear.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Bryan Beasley, caddying for Scott Kajeski. There's a new couple of guys that you need to follow. So we'll report in on how they do, and a lot of fun. Bryan, thank you so much again.
Thanks, John.